Hello everyone, this is Jim Lucy, Editor-in-Chief for Electrical Wholesaling and Electrical Marketing with the June 2nd edition of the Today's Electrical Economy podcast series sponsored by Champion Fiberglass. Champion began producing epoxy fiberglass conduit fittings in 1988 and in 1989 developed the first conduit from epoxy resins that had flame resistance and low smoke characteristics. This met the most stringent codes and specifications. Electrical Wholesaling, today's Electrical Economy podcast for today, we'll look at the electrical products that saw the biggest changes in electrical marketing's electrical price index, and we'll give you an updated list of some of the largest electrical projects now in the pipeline. We'll also check on some weekly economic indicators that can give you a sense of where the U.S. economy and electrical market may be headed. These 5 weekly indicators are initial unemployment claims at the state level, rail freight car traffic, the Baker Hughes rig count, oil prices, and copper prices. Our thanks again to Champion Fiberglass for sponsoring today's Electrical Economy podcast series for 2025. For the week ending May the 24th, the advanced figure for seasonally adjusted initial unemployment claims was 240,000. That is an increase of 14,000 from the previous week's revised level. The 4-week moving average was 230,750, and that is a decrease of 250 claims from the previous week's revised level. The U.S. unemployment claim was 4.2% in April, within a fraction of a point of the readings in March and February. For the week ending May the 24th, we didn't see any states that had a decrease in unemployment claims of 1,000, which is kind of one of the markers that I look at for significant movement in claims. The states with the biggest decreases in claims were Illinois, down 670 claims to 10,065. Texas was down 624 claims, now standing at 16,266, and Maryland was down 459 claims, now standing at 3,489. The state of Washington and Georgia were under 300 for changes, and that's all not too significant, but for this one state, those were the biggest drops. 3 states had increases of more in unemployment claims of more than 1,000 employees for the week ending May the 24th. Michigan was up 3,329 claims to 8,560. California's claims were up 1,424 to 41,552. And Nebraska was up 1,322. Overall, we haven't seen a huge amount of movement in unemployment claims over the last couple of months. It's obviously an important economic indicator, but we're not seeing any really large decreases or increases in it. So it's kind of status quo. We will look at it because the most recent data did show an increase in claims, but we'll keep an eye on it. Nothing dramatic going on here as far as I can tell. An interesting leading indicator for the overall U.S. economy is freight rail traffic. It's a measure of the amount of raw materials and finished goods being shipped by rail. The best source for this data is the American Association of Railroads, or AAR, which publishes this data weekly. With all the talks on tariffs and imports being in effect there, we kept thinking we might see a decline in the freight rail traffic, but that has not at all been the case over the past month and past year, really. And actually, numbers are tracking pretty positively, as you'll see in the next slide. For the most recent week, weekly rail traffic was 488,709 carloads or intermodal units. That's up fractionally, actually 0.7% compared with the same week last year. Compared U.S. Looking for that total combined U.S. traffic for the first 21 weeks of 2025, traffic was 10,280,643 carloads and intermodal units. That's an increase of 4.9% compared with this time last year. That's a percentage that has been pretty status quo over the last couple of weeks. So the numbers for this particular forward-looking economic indicator are looking pretty solid. Supporting this year-over-year increase is the fact that most of the major freight categories are standing on solid ground. In particular, the largest category, total intermodal units, which are those large containers that you see on ships, trains, and trucks, are up over 7% from last year. Coal, which in the past couple of years has been down quite a bit, is actually up 6.8% year over year. Grain is up 4.8%. The only major rail freight category registering a sizable decline is metallic ores and metals, which is down 3.8% year over year. Petroleum and petroleum products are down 1.1%. If you track the oil market, you're probably familiar with the Baker Hughes rig count, which tracks the oil and gas rigs that are operating. This data is available by state, by basin, and nationally every week at www.rigcount.bakerhughes.com. In this slide, you can see some of the largest oil and gas deposits. It gives you a good sense of just how many of them or large oil plays are in Texas and Oklahoma, and how big an area the Marcellus gas region covers in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and parts of West Virginia. Baker Hughes rig count saw a reasonably sizable drop of 3 rigs over the past week. The total rig count is 563. It's a 6.2% decline from this time last year, and it's 37 fewer oil and gas rigs in operation. The Canada Woodford Basin lost 2 rigs. It stands at 18 operating rigs, but it's still up 5.9% for the year. Of the largest oil producing states, Oklahoma appears to be having the most active drilling market right now. Although it lost a rig for the week, it's still up 23.8% for the year, and it's actually up 10 more operating rigs this time right now compared to this time last year. Oil prices have always been volatile, but over the past 18 months, they've been playing in a particularly broad band. On Monday, June the 2nd, the West Texas Intermediate Crude, or WTI oil price, was $62.83. Since January 1st of last year, 2024, they established a range of almost $30 per barrel, and registered a 52% swing from their top price to their bottom over the past 18 months or so. The average oil price during this time is $73.49, and you can see right now the oil price at $62.83 is a fairly large portion below that average price. Economists like to call copper pricing Dr. Copper because it's the leading economic indicator for future activity, since copper is used in so many industries, with the construction business among the leading markets for copper use because of all the places it's used in wire and cable and copper plumbing pipe. Copper price on June the 2nd was $4.70 per pound, according to the data at macrotrends.net. I have to tell you, if you're ever looking for some quick synopsis of different types of economic indicators and pricing data, macrotrends.net is a terrific place to give you an overview on that. And I pull all the data for the WTI oil prices and COMEX from that. But looking at copper, it's spent most of the time over the past 18 months between $4 and $5 a pound since January 2024. The U.S. economy has been through a lot since then, including the presidential election and the furor over tariffs. But through it all, copper is holding up, and then it's in fact averaging $4.34 per pound. It's off the highs of $5, but it hit earlier this year, but it's also not all that close to the lows of below $4 per pound. So it's always an incredibly cyclical market, and it's been holding true despite all the major things in the economy over the past 18 months. Copper pricing, as most people would agree, have been fairly healthy. The average price since then, again, $4.34 per pound. We are at $4.70 starting this week, so look copper up comfortably above the average over the past 18 months. Let's turn our attention now to the largest gainers in prices of electrical products that we look at in Electrical Marketing's Electrical Price Index, or EPI. If you ever want to see a more complete listing of all the electrical products, and we do track more than 20, it's only $99 a year for annual subscription. For information on that subscription, go to www.electricalmarketing.com, or you can contact me directly at jlucy@endeavorb2b.com. Now let's take a look at some of the gainers we saw with the biggest changes on a monthly and year-over-year basis. With our pricing data through April, the total index showed a comparative large increase of 1.5%. There were a number of product categories that were comfortably over that median there. Building wire and cable up 3.7%, electrical boxes up 3.1%, switchgear up 3%, telephone equipment up 2.8%, pole line hardware up 2.7%, wiring device and connectors up 2.6%, panel boards and switches up 2.5%, power, wire, and cable up 2.4%, as was metal conduit also up at 2.4%. You see some of the changes a little bit more extreme when we look at the year-over-year data. Leading the list year-over-year with a couple of double-digit increases here, panel boards and switches up 11.2%, circuit breakers up 10.5%, switchgear up 9.2%, building wire and cable up 9.1%, industrial controls up 9.1%, fuses up 7.9%, telephone equipment up 7.4%, power, wire, and cable up 7%. Total index, a year-over-year basis, up 4%, well over the historical averages were increased for that. So it's right now we're looking at some big increases. April is the month when the tariffs were first announced, so there could be some potential impact there. With the vagaries of the tariffs right now, we don't know exactly which ones are going to stick or not. We just had over the week, last Friday, the president announced some pretty major tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. Obviously, would have a very direct impact on everything in the electrical market. Let's see if those do come to be, we could see some further increases. This will be something that we're tracking very carefully. And as I mentioned, these are well over the industry averages on a monthly and year-over-year basis that we've seen in our electrical price index data, which we have it going back to the 1990s. So we've got a pretty long track run there to look and see where changes have occurred. One of my favorite projects here at Electrical Wholesaling and Electrical Marketing are compiling a listing of the largest electrical projects now in the pipeline. That's either being announced in the planning stages or underway. Looking at one of the projects that I found particularly interesting is the job that was planning in the planning stages, Palm Springs International Airport. And that's going to be over a $2 billion project there. So for any of you that have traveled through Palm Springs, going to the NED Westerns over the years, or for any other times, and going into the Conchilla Valley, you'll see it as one of the most unique airports there, because half of it is actually in the open air. But as you can see in the rendering here, they're looking at adding some new concourses and a lot of other types of things around the area for parking and rental cars and all. But always found that airport to be interesting. There's been a lot of airport activity, as you'll see in the next upcoming slides. I know that many of you are big travelers, and if you've seen anything like what I've caught over the last couple of years in particular, there's been a ton of airport construction of all over the country for sure. And most of these projects are well over, many of them $1 billion or more. But look at the airports, obviously in New York, overall $1 billion plus jobs at LaGuardia and looking at JFK there as well. All right, here in Kansas City, we've got an airport well over $1 billion. We've got some new ones that we mentioned also in that $1 billion range that are in various stages of completion or planning. Mentioned the Palm Springs Airport, and that's a $2.2 billion plan. In Columbus, Ohio, breaking ground in February was the John Glenn Columbus Airport, $1.8 billion. Most recently was plans announced for a terminal at the Cleveland Hopkins International Airport, $1.6 billion. We had another job broken down just a couple months ago. A beautiful airport in Fort Myers, Florida. It was one of my favorite ones as far as getting around. Terminally at the Southwest Florida International Airport broke ground there. Planning stages, Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky Airport, $575 million. Smaller project, but still interesting as a kind of regional airport. That's in Trenton, New Jersey, not too far from where I went to college at Glassboro State. And that is $300 million. That's in Ewing, New Jersey. Plans announced pretty recently. Just so much stuff that's going on at the airports in Houston and Dallas. There always seems to be a $1 billion project. This actually is a little bit smaller. United Maintenance Facility, some work going on that broke ground in May 25. This is probably a pretty cool looking airport in Fresno. The Fresno Yosemite International Airport expansion, $150 million there. Also another airport, and if anytime you go through Phoenix, that Sky Harbor, always seems like there's some big work going on there. In this particular case, they broke ground on a $326 million project at the Terminal 3 at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. Two of the other project types that caught my eye, looking over the project progress over the past 3 months, were in the hospital and schools and universities areas there. As we all know, data centers have been the big news in the construction market over the past couple of years. I just wanted to kind of take a little bit different crack at things here to show you some of that there are actually other types of projects underway. I could have easily compiled a whole bunch of new data center stuff, but I figured for the purposes of our discussions today, let's look at some other projects. We discussed airport, hospital work. Very large one in Sacramento broke ground in March 2025. Kaiser Permanente, Raleigh Arts Campus, $1.5 billion. In Danville, Pennsylvania, broke ground very recently, May 2025, Geisinger Medical Center. In Wentzville, Missouri, underway now, and that's just outside of St. Louis, 75-bed, 425,000 square foot Mercy Hospital. Entering the planning stages in March 2025, a $500 million expansion to the Scripps San Marcos Medical Center out in San Marcos. In Clackamas, Oregon, entered the planning stage April 2025. $230 million Kaiser Permanente Sunnyside Medical Center Tower. And out in Hawaii, entered the planning stage April 2025, $203 million hospital expansion. And I promise I'm doing my best not to butcher this name. Kailua Kona Hospital. And then Kamianani, Hawaii. My apologies for if I butchered the name there. And again, entering the planning stage 2025, $203 million project. Some interesting and really pretty sizable school projects, both on the K through 12 and college, which seem to be, I guess you could say, increasingly active. Revere High School in Revere, Mass, just north of Boston, entered the planning stage in April. $493 million project right there, very large. Up on the University of Wisconsin campus in Madison. That's a place I've never been to Madison. I want to see that campus. I've heard it's beautiful, and certainly the game day environment looks pretty cool. They've got a big project there. Their engineering school, the University of Wisconsin Philip A. Levy Engineering Center. Sounds like quite a project on what I hope everyone tells me is a beautiful campus. Looking into Chicago, site prep expected to begin in September. And this is the Pritzker School of Molecular Engineering and Chicago Quantum Exchange campus there. I think that must be something. It's the University of Chicago, I believe, and that is a $175 million project. Got down in Virginia, a $165 million project. Entering the planning stage in March, that is Roanoke High School. And we've got in Los Angeles, California, entering the planning stage, March 2025, Milken Community School, $135 million project. So going in, and this is the University of Tennessee Student Success Building in Knoxville, broke ground April 2025, $108 million project. I had a chance to tour the University of Tennessee campus. One of my sons is starting his MBA program in August there, and boy, it's a big campus and a really pretty setting there. It's I think that's going to be a very interesting experience for them there. And there's a lot of campus construction going. The whole campus seems to be under construction. This, as far as I know, is one of the bigger ones going on there. $108 million. I knew they were also building a new business school, or in addition to the business school there. It looked very large. I did not pick up any information on that as far as where they're at in the stage. And I know they've broken ground on it. It looked like a pretty sizable building. And in Indiana, the Purdue University Academic Success Building, $187 million, that broke ground in April. And we've talked, I think, in our past podcasts about all the construction projects of various types in the Indianapolis area and in Indiana in general, around Purdue in downtown Indianapolis. There's all kinds of construction going there, also in the areas of data centers and some of the tech semiconductor stuff. That is, I think that's a market to watch. More than as long as I've been tracking construction projects, I've never seen the Indianapolis market as hot as it right now. So good for them, for all the distributors, reps, contractors, and manufacturers in the area. It's a very interesting development for that state. Well, that wraps up our podcast for today. And thanks again to the team at Champion Fiberglass for sponsoring Electrical Wholesaling's today's Electriconomy podcast series. They've been sponsoring this for well over 100 broadcasts, and it's going over the past 5 years. And I appreciate all the help they've given us and support over the years. If you need any additional information on any of the data that we discussed today, please feel free to contact me directly at 913-461-7679 or by email at jlucy@endeavorb2b.com. Glad to chat with you on any of this. Always trying to fine-tune the content and see if there's anything new that we should be delivering here. Our next presentation will be on June the 16th. That'll be Monday, June the 16th. And until then, I look forward to talking with you in 2 weeks. Until then, so be happy, be healthy. Enjoy some of the start of the good summer weather here. Chat with you coming up on June 16th in 2 weeks. Take care.